Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The hospital room was shrouded in a heavy silence. The white walls reflected the cold, still light of the fluorescent tubes, while the monitor's steady beeping seemed to mark the time like a mournful metronome. In the center of the bed lay 10-year-old Clara Evans, her eyes closed, motionless, in a coma for 3 weeks after a mysterious collapse. Her parents, Elizabeth and Mark Evans, stood at her bedside, hands clasped, their faces etched with fatigue and anguish. "I don't understand it at all," Elizabeth murmured, her voice trembling. "How could this have happened to my little girl?" No one had found a clear medical cause. Test after test followed, doctors scratched their heads, and each test came back negative. Yet Clara wasn't just asleep, something strange hung around her, an invisible weight that even the machines couldn't detect. Several kilometers away, in a modest room with walls covered in drawings and books, Ethan Parker, a 12-year-old boy with strangely penetrating eyes, rubbed his temples. For several days, he had begun to hear voices. Words that didn't come from his mouth, images that weren't part of his memories. Suddenly, he sat up straight on his bed, as if startled. His voice changed, becoming deeper, more foreign. "Clara, she wants to talk, she says, that she was poisoned." The words escaped with unexpected force, icy yet charged with urgency. Ethan had always been a medium, capable of feeling strong emotions and perceiving fragments of what others called the invisible. But this time, it wasn't just a vision. It was Clara herself, trapped in her own body, trying to communicate through another. "She said, the doctor. Harrison." Ethan continued, his voice wavering as if carrying two consciousnesses at once. He wanted. In the hospital, the silence became even heavier. Ethan's parents stared at him, dumbfounded. How could a boy know these precise details, which no adult had ever revealed to him? Night was slowly falling on the city, but in that small room, an invisible storm was brewing. A silent battle between life and death, between innocence and cruelty, had just begun. Clara had chosen a messenger, and he was about to reveal the truth that no one was ready to hear. Ethan Parker woke with a start, his forehead damp, his heart pounding as if he'd run a marathon. Clara's voice still echoed in his head, fragile but insistent. "The doctor. Harrison, he put that in my juice." He shook his head, trying to shake off the feeling that he'd heard a spirit speaking to him. But the sensation persisted, heavy and tangible. He knew it wasn't just a hallucination. He had never felt such a strong and determined presence. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Elizabeth Evans sat beside her daughter's bed, holding her cold, pale hand. Dr. Lawson, a calm and reassuring man, had just left the room after repeating once again that everything seemed normal, except that Clara remained unconscious. "We have run every possible test, but nothing shows the cause of his coma," he said, his eyes sad but detached. As night enveloped the city, Ethan felt a shiver run through him. He closed his eyes and focused, letting the voices and images come to him. The room around him vanished, replaced by a vision of Clara in her hospital room. He could see details no one had shown him, the bedside table, the half-full glass of juice, and Dr. Harrison approaching with a strange, almost imperceptible but mischievous smile. "She remembers," Ethan murmured quietly, almost to himself. "She knows who." The words kept pouring out of his mouth uncontrollably. He described how Clara had drunk the juice that morning, and how it had tasted slightly bitter, a detail no parent would have noticed. The visions intensified, vials in the doctor's bag, quick, calculated, almost mechanical movements. Each gesture told a story, and Ethan relayed it word for word. At the hospital, Elizabeth felt a chill run down her spine when she heard Ethan recount these precise details. How does this boy know all this?" she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Ethan understood that the situation was serious. This was no longer a simple psychic ability, Clara was trying to save her life through him. And to do so, he had to convince the adults to take her words seriously, even if they defied all logic. That night, an invisible bond formed between the boy and the girl. A fragile yet powerful thread, capable of traversing the world of the living and that of those struggling in the darkness of a coma. The quest for truth had just begun. In the days that followed, Ethan became the center of the Evans family's attention. Every evening, he concentrated deeply, letting Clara guide his words and actions. His room filled with papers, frantic notes about Dr. Harrison's behavior, medication schedules, and every detail of what had happened in the hospital. She said, "The glass, the juice, the strange taste," Ethan murmured, his voice trembling. His eyes held that strange, both frightening and fascinating, glint. She smelled the poison, slowly, so no one would notice. Elizabeth and Mark listened, stunned. Every detail the boy gave corresponded to something tangible. The glass next to the bed, the small spoon Clara had used to take her medication, the exact time Dr. Harrison's behavior had changed, everything matched up. The medium also had more intimate visions. He saw Clara, frightened but lucid, trying to communicate not only what she had endured, but also details about the person who had hurt her. "He wants you to know, he's jealous of me," Ethan repeated. "Harrison, he likes to control." Tension mounted as the boy described scenes no one could have imagined, Harrison pouring something into the juice, watching Clara to gauge her reaction, his face barely concealing his perverse satisfaction. Elizabeth felt a simmering anger rise within her. She wanted to rush to the hospital, confront the doctor, but she knew they had to proceed with caution. One evening, Ethan collapsed from exhaustion. His eyes were ringed with dark circles, his voice weak, but he continued nonetheless. "She says that proof is needed for justice to be served." It was Clara, through him, who demanded that her attacker be arrested before he struck again. Mark then understood that this boy was not simply a medium, he was the vital link between the little girl and the outside world, the channel through which the truth could be revealed. Every clue, every word, every vision brought the Evanses closer to the unimaginable, the revelation that Dr. Harrison, a respected and trusted physician, was in fact their daughter's poisoner. That night, in the heavy silence of Ethan's room, the decision became clear: they had to alert the authorities and gather all the evidence. Clara spoke through Ethan, and her revelations would soon change the course of all their lives. The sun had barely risen when the Evanses arrived at the hospital, accompanied by a detective named Samuel Green, who had been called in by the police after the evidence provided by Ethan was deemed credible. Ethan, still tired, held a notebook filled with notes, drawings, and diagrams describing Dr. Harrison's actions. Dr. Harrison entered Clara's room with his usual reassuring smile. But as soon as he saw the detective, his expression changed imperceptibly. His face, so composed in front of Clara's parents, betrayed a sudden tension. "Dr. Harrison, we have a few questions," Green began, his voice firm but calm. "Could you explain some anomalies concerning Clara Evans' medication?" Ethan, sitting to the side, closed his eyes and felt Clara's presence guiding him again. His voice changed, taking on a clear and direct tone, that of the little girl. You put something in my juice." The words echoed through the room like a chilling reverberation. Harrison flinched. No one had ever dared accuse him like that, let alone with such terrifying precision. The detective then presented the accumulated evidence, the medication schedules, Ethan's notes on suspicious behavior, and even Clara's indirect testimony through the boy. Every detail confirmed what no one would have imagined: Dr. Harrison had indeed poisoned Clara, motivated by unhealthy jealousy and a morbid desire for control. Feeling his world crumbling around him, Harrison tried to deny everything, but the evidence was irrefutable. His hands trembled, his eyes avoided those of the little girl and the medium. Finally, under pressure from the police and the overwhelming evidence, he broke down. "Yes, it's me. I didn't mean to." He nearly collapsed, allowing the police to handcuff him. Elizabeth and Mark felt a mixture of relief and horror. Justice had been served, but the trauma of this betrayal would remain etched in their memories. Ethan, exhausted but proud, felt Clara's presence soften through him. His eyes filled with tears as he whispered, "She is safe now." This confrontation marked a turning point. The truth had come out, and Clara, even in her coma, had managed to protect her life thanks to an invisible but indestructible bond with Ethan. A few days after Dr. Harrison's arrest, a fragile calm settled over the Evans home. The hospital lights shone less oppressively in their eyes, and Clara's breaths seemed more regular. Ethan, still exhausted from the night spent channeling the little girl's voice, sat down by her bed. He closed his eyes and felt Clara's presence again. This time, it wasn't a voice of distress, but a breath of gratitude. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice blending with Clara's, soft and clear. Then, a miracle happened. Clara moved her fingers slightly, then blinked. Elizabeth and Mark, astonished, rushed to her side. "Clara! My darling!" Elizabeth sobbed, clutching her daughter tightly, while Mark trembled with emotion. Clara finally opened her eyes and stared at Ethan, a faint but bright smile on her face. "Thank you, for speaking for me," she said, her voice still fragile, but alive. The bond between Clara and Ethan, so mysterious and powerful, had survived the ordeal. The parents understood that their daughter had been protected by a force they could not explain, a miracle embodied by a boy who had never shied away from the unseen. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to normal. Harrison was charged and prosecuted for his crimes, while Clara, surrounded by her family, regained her strength. Ethan, for his part, became more than a friend, he became a confidant, the silent and indispensable witness to what could have been a total tragedy. One afternoon, as the sun bathed Clara's room in a warm light, she looked at Ethan and whispered, "Without you, I wouldn't be here." The boy smiled, a mixture of weariness and pride in his eyes. He knew that what they had gone through would remain forever etched in their lives, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, truth and courage could rise, carried by invisible but indestructible bonds. And as the little girl rediscovered her zest for life, a feeling of wonder hung in the air, that of a silent miracle, born from the courage of a soul caught between two worlds and the determination of a boy to hear what no one else could perceive.